So a 21-year-old University of Kentucky student was just arrested on Sunday. She's charged with abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. After her roommates found a newborn's deceased body wrapped in a towel in a garbage bag inside of her closet, they call authorities, they come and investigate, they read her Miranda rights, they arrest her, and she admits that she had just given birth. Her arraignment was supposed to take place today at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But on January 27th of 2023, there was another case that made global sensational news, and it was the Alexee Trevizo case. A 19-year-old who concealed the fact that she was pregnant went to the hospital full term, complaining of back pain. She was in active labor. We all know the story because we all saw the body cam and CCTV footage. She then goes to the bathroom, gives birth, disposes of her baby in the trash receptacle, and covers it up. Hospital staff immediately find the baby, and law enforcement is called in, and it's been 2 years. Well, technically over 2.5 now. And now the New Mexico Supreme Court is involved. She still has not gone to trial. Well, in 2 days' time, Thursday, there's supposed to finally be a hearing regarding what evidence the Supreme Court is going to allow in and what they're not going to allow in, etc., etc. Now, you're talking the Alexee Trevizo case. She was 19 when this happened. This other girl in Kentucky is a senior at the University of Kentucky. She's 21. You're not talking about a scared 12, 13, 14-year-old kid who was concealing their pregnancy because they didn't have the mental capacity or wherewithal to not even just acknowledge it, but didn't know how to respond and was scared. Not knowing how to respond to being pregnant, not knowing how to respond to being in labor, giving birth, having an entire infant. But Alexee Trevizo was 19. Laken Snelling is 21. There's nothing that you can say to me that is going to make me convinced at all that these two did not know exactly what was happening to them in their body. Pregnancy and childbirth are unfortunately a consequence of sex. And with over 47 different types of contraception to prevent a pregnancy or to stop a pregnancy from happening in the event of an accident, there's really no excuse for that kind of pure negligence. But for 9 whole months out of 365 days to conceal a pregnancy, knowing good damn and well you can just forfeit your baby, no questions asked. Why? What kind of heinous monster does that to a baby? A narcissistic, sociopathic, entitled, spoiled little brat. If you are woman enough to have sex and you're a full-grown adult, you should be woman enough to tell somebody to seek a doctor for that baby's sake, to hand the baby over. There's absolutely no excuse. No excuse. Like I said, you can somewhat make it digestible if it's a 13, 14, even 15-year-old, because you expect young girls, especially in the event of SA or something like that, it's very hard for them to vocalize what's happened to them, very hard for them to understand what's happening to their body, the changes that it's going through. Sometimes it's very hard for them to consciously be aware of the fact that they are carrying an entire living being. But we don't expect that from an almost 20-year-old and almost 22-year-old. And their excuse and defense is always going to be that it was stillborn, that it wasn't crying, that it wasn't breathing. These girls probably didn't even take prenatal vitamins. They never saw a single doctor during their entire pregnancy. Then all of a sudden, they're now an expert in delivery, labor and delivery, and they're just a self-appointed OBGYN all of a sudden. Not every baby cries right away. They're going from a placenta with amniotic fluid to breathing air. That's why the first thing a resident or a doctor that's delivering a baby does is try to clear their airways and promote them crying because it helps their lungs. I see both of these cases having some kind of high-end attorney taking it on pro bono because of the media coverage. And like so many girls before, getting them completely off or arguing the fact that the baby was not born alive. It's not born alive when it has a mother that makes sure that it's not going to live. I don't know, there's a few crimes that, there's a lot of petty shit. There's a lot of small little things that people can overlook, people can forgive, people can be granted redemption and mercy on, but murder and intentional abuse or neglect on a child, or SA, I don't know, that's pretty high on the list of, you can't ever come back from that. That's not really forgivable. You are consciously aware of what you're doing and you are an active participant in what you did. No matter who, what, where, when, why, or how. That's not digestible. Not to me. Probably not to many other mothers. And this is just one of those things where if you value life, you value all life. All life. You can't sit here and condemn people like Gypsy Rose Blanchard for taking the life of her mother despite her mother not being perfect. Because then if you argue that, then you have to argue that every single person of 8 billion people across 195 countries on planet Earth all deserve to be murdered then, because we're all imperfect. We all fail short of the glory of God. But you can't sit here and say that killing a full-term baby, and I'm not going to get into the abortion debate for anybody, pro-life or pro-choice, but you can't sit here and say that it is okay to take the life of a full-term baby that is actively being born and brought into the world. Or that the opposite, that it is not okay to take the life of a baby that is actively being born full-term. But it's okay for Gypsy Rose Blanchard to take the life of her mother because her mother also failed short of the glory of God, of being a perfect person. And like her stands and everybody like to say, don't invalidate abuse. Whereas we like to say, you got to validate abuse ever happened. And until you can do that, murder is murder is murder is wrong. But with the Kentucky woman being arraigned today, and then Alexee Trevizo has an entire court date finally on Thursday, but that's up to the New Mexico Supreme Court. Maybe both of these women are finally going to have to face the music for taking the lives of their infant children. Because trust me, there was somebody on planet Earth who would have loved that baby. Despite and regardless of the fact that the person carrying it and birthing it failed to do that. And once you start being lenient on one case, it's going to set a precedence to be lenient on others. And all that's going to do is negatively incentivize other people to keep doing crimes like that. And of course, look at Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She has inadvertently, even if she didn't mean to, with the fame, the social media clout, the attention, the money, the interviews, the reality TV show, caused 24 other young teens or adults into doing what she did. Either doing it or attempting to do it to the mother, stepmother, father, mother and stepfather. 24 cases since December 28th of 2023 when she was released. At what point is the legal system going to set a precedence and say that this is not okay and start really throwing the book at these people? Not only am I here for it, I'm waiting for it.